On June 7, 1992, three women vanished from a quiet street in Springfield, Missouri, leaving behind their cars, their purses, their cigarettes, and a broken porch light globe that had been swept into a neat pile, and they have never been seen again. Part 1: The Night They Vanished. The last day of Suzie Streeter's life began like any other Saturday in early June. She was 19 years old, blonde, sharp-tongued, and fiercely independent. She had just graduated from Kickapoo High School the night before, and the summer stretched out in front of her like an open road. Her mother, Sherrill Levitt, was 47, a cosmetologist who ran her own business out of the family home at 1717 East Delmar Street. Sherrill was the kind of woman who kept a spotless house, who swept the front porch every evening, who left the porch light on for her daughter no matter how late she came home. Suzie's best friend, Stacy McCall, was 18, fresh out of Glendale High School, and had spent the night celebrating her own graduation at a series of parties that sprawled across Springfield's south side. By 2 a.m. On June 7, Suzie and Stacy were tired. They had been to at least 3 different parties, bouncing between classmates and friends, and they decided they wanted to sleep at Suzie's house on Delmar. Stacy's parents expected her home, but she called them and said she was staying with Suzie. That was the last time anyone heard her voice. Suzie and Stacy pulled into the driveway at 1717 East Delmar sometime after 2:15 a.m. The house was a modest, single-story bungalow with white siding and a carport. Sherrill's turquoise 1977 Mercury Cougar was parked out front. Suzie's 1977 Pontiac Grand Prix sat in the drive. Stacy's 1984 Jeep Wrangler would be found parked on the street. All 3 vehicles were accounted for. All 3 women were not. Inside the house, Sherrill had been awake. She had made a phone call to a friend at around 11 p.m., a routine check-in that lasted a few minutes. The friend later told police that Sherrill sounded normal, relaxed, perhaps a little tired. After that call, Sherrill turned on the television in her bedroom, and the television was still on when the house was discovered the next morning. Part 2: The House on Delmar. Sunday, June 7, 1992, dawned hot and humid. At around 8:30 a.m., Janelle Kirby, a friend of Suzie's, arrived at the Delmar house to pick up Stacy. She had been calling since 7 a.m. and getting no answer, which was strange because Suzie always answered the phone. Janelle knocked on the front door. No response. She walked around the side of the house and peered through the window of Suzie's bedroom. The bed was empty, the covers thrown back. Janelle called her mother, then called Stacy's parents. By 10 a.m., a small crowd had gathered on the front lawn. The front door was unlocked. Janelle's mother pushed it open and stepped inside. What they found defied every expectation. Sherrill's purse was on the floor in the living room, its contents spilling out: wallet, makeup, keys. Suzie's purse was on the kitchen counter, and her cigarettes sat beside it. Stacy's purse was on the floor near the front door. A cash amount of $200 was found in Sherrill's wallet, untouched. On the porch, the glass globe that covered the light fixture was shattered, and someone had swept the shards into a neat pile against the wall. That detail, the sweeping, would haunt investigators for decades. The television in Sherrill's bedroom was still on. The beds in all 3 rooms were unmade, as if the women had been sleeping or had just gotten up. Suzie's bed looked as if someone had been lying on top of the covers. Sherrill's bed was the same. Stacy's bed, in the guest room, was rumpled but not slept in. The front door was unlocked. The back door was unlocked. There were no signs of a struggle. No blood. No overturned furniture. No forced entry. The women had simply vanished. Police arrived at 11:30 a.m. They treated the house as a crime scene, but they had no crime to work with. The 3 cars were still in the driveway. The keys were in the purses. The women had left behind everything, including their cigarettes, which all 3 smoked. Smokers do not leave their cigarettes behind voluntarily. Part 3: The Investigation. The Springfield Police Department initially assumed the women had gone somewhere together, maybe for breakfast, maybe for a walk. But by Sunday evening, that theory collapsed. No one had seen them. No one had heard from them. The answering machine in the house was blinking with messages, and this is where the case takes its first strange turn. The police listened to the tape. There were several hang-up calls, which is not unusual for a house with a teenage daughter. But there was one call that stood out. A male voice, muffled, said something that sounded like, "I'll be there in 15 minutes." Then a hang-up. Another call, later, featured a woman's voice whispering, "Is anybody there?" The police could not identify the voices. They also noted that the answering machine had a feature that allowed callers to listen to messages remotely, and they could not rule out that the tape had been accessed or manipulated. The investigation quickly became a media circus. Hundreds of volunteers searched the Ozarks. Bloodhounds were brought in, but they lost the scent at the end of the driveway, as if the women had been carried into a vehicle. The police interviewed more than 1,000 people. They drained lakes. They searched abandoned mines. They found nothing. The early missteps were significant. The house was not secured immediately. Friends and family walked through it for hours before police sealed it. The answering machine tape was nearly lost when a family member accidentally recorded over part of it. The porch light globe was not collected as evidence for several days. And the police initially dismissed the possibility of foul play, which allowed critical hours to pass without a coordinated response. Part 4: The Suspects. 3 names have dominated the case over the years. The first is Robert Craig Cox, a convicted kidnapper and rapist who was in Springfield on the night of June 6, 1992. Cox was out on parole and had been seen at a bar near the Delmar house that evening. He later told multiple people, including a fellow inmate, that he knew the 3 women were dead. He claimed they were buried in a field near a pig farm. When police questioned him, he refused to give details and has since recanted, saying he was only trying to get attention. But Cox had a history of targeting women who resembled Suzie Streeter, young, blonde, and petite. He was never charged. The second suspect is Larry Dwayne Hall, a serial killer from Indiana who was convicted of abducting and murdering a teenage girl in 1994. Hall confessed to the Springfield Three murders, then recanted. He claimed he had been in the area at the time, driving a van with a false floor. His confession was detailed enough to interest investigators, but he later said he made it up to gain notoriety. Hall is serving life in prison for the other murder. He remains a person of interest. The third suspect is not a single person but a group, 3 young men, Dustin Rekla, Michael Clay, and Joseph Riedel, who were arrested in 2007 for digging up graves in a local cemetery. They lived within a mile of the Delmar house. They were obsessed with the occult and had a history of trespassing. Police searched their properties and found items that were later linked to the case, including a piece of carpet that matched the type used in the Delmar house. But the men were never charged with the disappearances. Rekla, who was the most vocal, claimed he had no knowledge of the women. He died in 2016. The others were released. Part 5: 3 Decades of Silence. In 2007, a private investigator named Tom Brucker obtained permission to use ground-penetrating radar on a parking lot adjacent to Cox South Hospital in Springfield. The radar detected anomalies beneath the surface, large, irregular shapes that were consistent with buried objects or disturbed soil. The hospital parking garage had been under construction during the weekend the women vanished. The site was a known gathering spot for local teens, and investigators had long speculated that the women might be buried there. But the hospital refused to allow excavation, citing the cost and the disruption to the garage. The anomalies were never investigated further. The case remains open with the Springfield Police Department. In 2020, the FBI announced they were reviewing the case with new forensic technology, including DNA analysis of items found in the house. No results have been released. The house at 1717 East Delmar still stands. It has changed hands several times. Residents have reported strange noises, cold spots, and the feeling of being watched. The porch light globe was replaced, but the new one has never been broken. Over 3 decades, the Springfield Three have become a fixture in American true crime lore. They are one of the few cases where an entire family unit, mother, daughter, and friend, disappeared without a single trace. No bodies. No witnesses. No credible confession. The numbers are stark: 3 women, 0 suspects charged, 0 remains recovered, 0 answers. Over 30 years, the case has generated over 1,000 interviews, countless tips, and at least 10 different theories. None have produced a single break. The last person to see Sherrill Levitt alive, besides her daughter and Stacy, was her friend on the phone at 11 p.m. on June 6. She told police that Sherrill said she was going to bed. The television was still on when the house was discovered. The beds were unmade. The cigarettes were on the counter. The cars were in the drive. The porch light was shattered, and the glass had been swept away. 3 women, one summer night, a house on a quiet street. The door was unlocked. The porch light was broken. And the silence that followed has never been broken. If you know anything, the Springfield Police Department still wants to hear from you. It has been 31 years. Somewhere, someone knows what happened at 1717 East Delmar. And somewhere, 3 women are still waiting to be found.